Finance Committee will come to order at 7:05. We're meeting in the first floor meeting room of Town Hall. This is March 1. Our topics tonight will be miscellaneous and resolution petitions and zoning, and then we're going to work on the operating budget numbers. So welcome. Tonight we have with us people from the planning department and board. And we'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Rob Crowner. I'm the chair of the zoning subcommittee.
I'm sorry, your name was Rob?
Crowner,
Okay, can you spell it?
C-R-O-W-N-E-R.
Thank you.
And I'm Chris Brestrup, I'm the planning director.
Okay. And the new people here who share, okay, do you know them?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody, do you know them, Joe?
I do not. Rob, what's your title?
I'm the chair of the zoning subcommittee.
You're the chair? Okay, thank you.
Okay. And you are?
That's Joe Jane.
Oh, sorry, am I introducing myself? I'm sorry, I'm Joe Jane, Finance Committee.
Okay.
I think the rest of us you know, been here before. Okay, we did, do you have the packets? For the, we're going to start with the,
Yeah,
the
they're right
zoning.
here.
Okay, did everybody get them?
Petitions.
Okay, Ken,
You want them?
I have one.
We have these, but we can't reach this last.
Okay.
Let's pass a couple.
So we'll let you begin, and, oh, you don't have anything for this, you don't have any numbers for that. Okay, we'll let you begin wherever you would like to on the information that we have.
Okay, so we have a number of articles this year. I don't think many of them will have a significant financial impact, but obviously it's high. The first three are some small adjustments to the marijuana regulations. We knew when we brought the article last fall that the Cannabis Control Commission wasn't done with their work. We knew there would be some adjustments, and these are the first three that we have. There will likely be more, but we had staff and the select board working group identified these as the first ones that we should tackle. The first one is retail locations. You'll recall at the town meeting we proposed that the number of marijuana retail establishments be limited to 8 throughout town.
Keep going, I'm gonna close the door.
It was realized that establishments could have multiple locations conceivably, or it could be argued that they might have multiple locations. It was clear that the town wanted to limit the number of locations to 8. So we're proposing changing wording in that section of the bylaw from establishments to locations, make it clear that's locations. The next one is
So, I'm sorry, so that hasn't changed, we're still at 8?
it's still an 8.
Okay, cool,
yeah.
yeah.
The next one is clarifying the profit, non-profit status of medical marijuana treatment centers and off-site medical marijuana dispensaries. When the medical marijuana law passed a few years ago, medical marijuana establishments were intended to be non-profit businesses. Now that recreational marijuana has been legalized, that's obviously not going to be non-profit. And medical establishments are going to be allowed to convert to retail, to recreational retail. So it doesn't really make sense to limit them to non-profit businesses. So this article will just delete a couple references to the non-profit status of medical marijuana establishments, so that it doesn't limit them.
I have a question. How do you define nonprofit?
It's not there's no shareholders who get dividends from the business. All of the surplus that the business makes stays in the business.
But if I own the business,
If you own a
that's
business,
my profit.
no, you can pay yourself a salary, and you might pay yourself an extravagant salary, but that's an expense of the business. Any profit that's left over after you pay yourself your salary is not yours.
Where does it go?
It stays in the business as retained earnings in the business. The business can use them next year if they have a deficit to make up a deficit, or they can invest it in equipment or whatever.
But it seems that they're probably somewhat beneficial to people who own it, or you wouldn't have them.
Agreed.
Okay. Joe, you had a question?
Yes, Rob, thanks. So for this zoning, we're saying that the medical marijuana sites are nonprofit and recreational are profit.
That is currently the case.
That is currently the case, and that's not changing.
That is changing. It's changing so that medical marijuana facilities are not restricted to nonprofit. They can be for-profit
Okay,
because they are allowed to sell recreational marijuana as well.
awesome.
If they get a permit to do
If
so.
they get
Honorable?
So is there a state law that they have to be non-profit right now?
Yes.
So the state law is changing to allow them to become for-profit if they choose to be so, even if they choose to stay just medical,
That's right.
right? So if they choose not to have any recreational and they stay medical, they can become a for-profit medical marijuana.
That's what we understand.
Okay.
That's what's been told to us. But we haven't seen the final regulations yet. They're not coming out till March 15th.
Okay.
And they can be stockholders in that if they're for profit. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Janice?
So is there any like state designation that or application to make them nonprofit like there are for other kinds of organizations?
Chris?
The state is going to be licensing marijuana establishments. It already licenses medical marijuana establishments, and it's going to be licensing retail marijuana establishments as of, they're going to be taking applications for licensing on April 1st. And then I think they are planning to actually issue licenses by July. So the applicant would apply to the state and would tell the state, we want to be nonprofit, we want to be for-profit, we want to be retail, we want to be medical, whatever it is they want to do, and then the state would license them that way, and that's how they would come to us.
More questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last marijuana-related article has to do with different kinds of marijuana uses. The state has established about a dozen different kinds of businesses that can deal with marijuana, delivery services, social consumption services, growing services, all these different kinds. Our bylaw right now only has specific categories for a retailer, for a shop storefront, and for a medical dispensary or a off-site, or for a treatment center, medical related. It's likely that one or more other kinds of businesses might want to do business in Amherst. And so we either have to make room for them by establishing them in our bylaw, or allow the building commissioner to fit them in somewhere in an existing use. If we want to have control over where they're located or how they're regulated, then we need to put them in our bylaw. So we haven't actually decided which of the uses we're going to target for the first round for this article. Maybe all of them, maybe one or two of them. And what permitting status we're going to put for each of the zones for them. We haven't arrived at that yet. We're working on an article, and that'll be ready by the time meeting, but it's not quite ready yet, so I can't tell you which. It's likely that so a couple of the new uses that the state has defined include micro cultivator, a small scale operation, and then a craft cooperative cultivator and just a cultivator. So there are different levels of what they imagine people growing marijuana will be operating at. One or more of those might want to exist in Amherst, and we might think that's a good idea, because they will be presumably profitable businesses. They will be different than a storefront retailer. So the 8 that we have established is for storefront retailers. It will not necessarily cover these other businesses.
Sharon, and then Bernie.
Is there any talk about limiting the number of these other kinds of businesses? Regulation or not?
We have not discussed that.
Bernie?
And this is simply because the commission is mulling this stuff over. They haven't classified any of these, right?
No, they have. Their final regulations haven't come out yet, but the preliminary have included all of these.
Okay.
Maybe all of those will want to locate in Amherst, but that's a lot of different kinds of businesses, and some of them, we might not really care. You might not be able to tell the difference between a testing lab that does marijuana and a testing lab that does something else. And so maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we don't need to regulate those.
Okay, Joe, and then Sharon.
Rob, so another kind of business in marijuana that can be a testing lab, or can you give us an example? Is that an example? Or
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay,
Sure.
so a testing lab could be another type of business. We are not zoned for that right now.
We're not zoned specifically for medical testing, or for marijuana testing.
Marijuana testing.
That, we do have research and development
Okay.
uses that maybe would fit in there.
Okay.
But then we'll be governed by those regulations and those zones that it's permitted in,
Okay.
and it may or may not be the right zones.
Gotcha.
Sharon?
Thank you.
So this is a related question, since we kind of tied marijuana, or the number of marijuana dispensaries or locations to alcohol and those kind of distributors. Is that limited? Like, are microbreweries limited in any way, or like we've already kind of done a comparison with marijuana and alcohol? Are these kinds of things
So,
kind of regulated in that industry?
not by zoning. Alcohol is not regulated by zoning, except for Class 2 restaurants.
But like a brewery, so a brewery is not regulated by zoning. Okay.
We don't have a specific zoning category. Breweries are often connected to restaurants.
Anurag?
So, just kind of a broader question from a finance committee's point of view, because we are interested in money. From your scenario planning, do you have any sense of how big this business is you expect in your planning? How are you thinking about how big this business is going to be, or how much demand there's going to be for these retail locations? And what are and how does the town benefit tax-wise on those?
So, Planning Board and Zoning Subcommittee hasn't really gotten into what the demand is. We are relying on the work that the Select Board Staff Working Group is doing, the input that Jeff Kravitz is receiving, and the research that members are doing. So I don't personally have a sense of how great the demand is.
Well, yeah, sorry.
Okay, Chris, you want to answer?
Although we don't know how great the demand is, we do know that the town voted to impose a 3% sales tax on sales of recreational marijuana. So that is something that those will be revenues that will come to the town. The town is also requiring host agreements to be signed with all of these establishments. So the host agreement requires that the applicant pay the town the amount of money. It's related to how much money it costs the town to deal with this. Are there traffic implications? Are there problems with people driving, impaired? Are there additional officers that are needed in order to monitor what's going on and that kind of thing? So Those are two things. The host agreement, and the town manager and the select board work on the host agreement with the applicant. And then there's the 3% sales tax. So whatever the sales quantity is, the town will get 3%.
May I follow up on a couple
Sure.
of things? So, thank you, that's very helpful. My question was, it'll be hard for the town hall to really estimate the demand, but there are proxies for it. The proxy would be how many applications are coming in for recreation locations or medical locations. So if they were like, we have 8 we are kind of planning to allow, do we have 3 applications or do we have 30? That'll give us a sense of not the exact numbers, but how big the stress is going to be on the town from those things.
So right now we have 4 entities that are interested in establishing medical facilities. One is almost up and running, and there are 3 others that are sort of in the wings. So those are the medical establishments. We understand from all of them that they're interested in converting to recreational when recreational becomes a possibility. We are approached on about a weekly basis, the economic development director and my office, with people wanting to find out, where can I do this, how do I establish myself, what zones is this allowed in, etc. So there are many people kind of circling out there, but we don't have applications for these things yet because they're not able to be licensed by the state. So until they're able to be licensed by the state, I don't think we'll really know how many people want to come to Amherst. But we know at least 4.
So the bylaw allows only 4 medical, right? But
No.
8 recreational?
Okay.
8 either medical or recreational or both? No,
I don't think there's a limit on medical. There's a limit on recreational.
There is no limit on medical, but there is limit on recreational. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Sharon and then Joe.
Just quick clarification, the 3% sales tax, is that for recreational and medical or just recreational?
I think it's just recreational.
Okay.
And so for the medical, those are not for profit, storefronts or whatever. Does that work does the town collect any revenue? Like schools, we don't collect revenue from Amherst College because it's not for profit? Is that a stupid question, or does that make any sense?
Well,
Go ahead,
They'll
Chris.
pay property tax.
They pay property tax, okay.
Or their family will pay property tax.
Okay.
Chris wants to answer.
I just
Oh,
wanted to say
okay,
that all
thank
of these entities will have a host agreement, whether they're medical marijuana facilities or recreational, they'll all have a host agreement with the
Okay.
town, and the town will get revenue from those host agreements.
Gotcha.
just,
Yeah,
sorry, just
Bernie
one
and
more.
then Sharon.
No,
Oh.
being nonprofit doesn't mean you're tax exempt.
Right, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
And with the host agreement, it all depends on how the corporation's structured and whether or not the assessors agree they are in fact an educational or charitable organization that qualifies for tax exemption. So, but the host agreements will certainly cover anything.
Did one of you say medical always means not-for-profit? If you're selling medical marijuana, you are a not-for-profit?
Currently, that is the case. One of these articles.
But that's what we're trying to, so you
Rezone.
could potentially be a medical or recreational and be either one of those, it doesn't matter.
Okay, Chris.
So the state has a definition of medical marijuana that says it's nonprofit. But the state has also instituted a new rule, I think as of last summer, that says, or maybe it's in October, that says that people can apply to convert from nonprofit to for-profit. So probably many people will do that. In addition, there's no requirement that the recreational marijuana be nonprofit. So they're definitely a for-profit operation.
Right, so you're saying that we have the medical and the for-profit sells marijuana for recreational reasons. When we talk about different ways, is that for-profit just I have no idea what marijuana is or whatever, but is it something they sell whatever it is, but it's not baked goods? Or can they, in the retail environment, can they put marijuana in anything and be a retail establishment? So I could buy brownies, I could do whatever. I'm not clear on that because people worry about our children. Yes.
So there will be requirements about, they will be able to sell things that look like candy and things that look like brownies that are brownies,
Okay.
bread, whatever can contain marijuana, except alcohol. You can't have alcohol and marijuana at the same time. But there will be regulations with regard to dosing. So you will know when you eat the brownie whether it has X number of, I don't know exactly how you count, marijuana, cannabinoids.
It has
in it or
labeling,
not.
there's-
It will have labeling on it.
Okay,
So
how
that's
many
one of the things
calories?
that, probably calories as well. They will be labeled so that you'll know, so that you know,
Oh, okay.
will be able to control your dose.
Yeah, but you can't, it's not a retail store where you can walk in and just buy. I
Well-
think it's gonna be still, you have to probably show some identification
I don't think so.
or age and
Chris.
stuff. Would you not? I mean,
It's,
if a kid
Oh,
walks in
okay.
there from high school, would they be able to buy? Will they have to show ID, just like in, consuming alcohol in restaurants?
okay, Chris.
So it's only for people over 21.
Yes.
The retail sales are for people over 21, but people over 21 will be able to walk in to the store and present their ID and purchase whatever.
But they
there
still
is
have to present
available.
the ID.
That's correct.
So if you want to buy a shoe, you don't have to present your
That's
ID.
right. Yep.
So,
Okay.
Unless you have marijuana in your shoes.
Yeah. Very enlightening. Okay.
that's
It
an
looks like
interesting
we've kind of
concept.
done the marijuana bit. So where are we now in terms of your presentation?
The next one we have is a tweak to the supplemental dwelling units bylaw. A couple years ago, we proposed and town meeting adopted enlargement of the supplemental dwelling units bylaws, accessory use to a main use, primary residential use. We changed the bylaw so that you could have a detached structure, you can either convert or build a detached structure on the same property as a primary residential use and rent out. When we proposed that bylaw, we restricted the size of the detached dwelling unit to 800 square feet or 900 square feet if it was a handicap accessible. Feedback that the planning department has gotten is that that's a little bit too small for some people. It doesn't provide enough space for, say, 2 bedrooms. Sometimes people want a little bit bigger size. So we're proposing to change the maximum size of a supplemental detached dwelling unit to 1,000 square feet or 1,100 square feet for a handicap accessible unit. It would not change the size of an attached supplemental unit, one that is part of your house, not part of your house. And it doesn't change the fact that one of the units, either the supplemental unit or the main unit, has to be owner occupied. It just changes the size of a detached structure, which requires a special permit.
I'm sorry about that, was going from 800?
800 to 1,000.
Gotcha, thank you.
Other questions on this article? Okay, then the next article.
I don't know what your list says.
Demolition delay.
Okay, so they have that crossed out.
This is the demolition
Okay,
delay.
so the demolition delay, the historical commission and staff, the building commissioner, have been dissatisfied with the way the demolition delay bylaw works. It's section 13 of the zoning bylaw. It allows the historical commission to impose a delay on a historic building before it's demolished to make way for something else, if they think that it has some significance to the town. The bylaws, the way the bylaw works is not going to change very much. There's some definitions added. The procedure is reorganized a little bit so it's easier to understand and it makes better sense. But as I understand it, the maximum amount of time that a delay can be imposed is going to stay at 12 months.
Oh, it is going to stay? Yes.
The Historical Commission voted last Monday to have it be 12 months and not extend it to 18 months.
Because I had read somewhere 18 months.
Yeah, they've been talking about 18
That
months.
was concerning.
So,
Yes.
just if I have a follow-up, I understand that there's one historical commission member who was absent at the last meeting on Monday, and he may choose to bring that topic back to the historical commission. They're considering this again Tuesday, on the 6th of March. So there may be an opportunity to have another vote, but right now, the text reads 12 months.
Questions on that? Joe?
Okay, so just the change in this demolition delay bylaw is, we're just staying at 12 months? It's not going to be extended to 18 months? Is that what we're stating here?
That's right. What's happening is that the bylaw, the article in the bylaw
Yeah.
that has demolition delay, is just being reorganized and clarified.
Okay,
It's not really changing the regulations much at all.
okay.
There is one gap that was identified, and I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, but there was a possibility that a delay, a demolition permit could expire before a building permit expired, something like that. Those now will be lined up so they expire at the same time, and you don't have a building permit that's still good, but you can't demolish them.
Bernie?
That's right.
Section 13.3, building permit review alterations. There's a blank before years of age for the structure.
Right, that was another topic of discussion. That is going to stay at 50, I believe. It's currently 50. It's going to stay at 50. They were talking about possibly making it longer or older.
Older, yeah.
But that's just a first filter.
Right.
It doesn't mean that a building that's 50 years old is historic. It just means that it's something that building
So that's
commission.
standard with the state right now, if my understanding.
Always,
If you have a building that's 50 years or older, and you're going to do some exterior work with it, you need to talk to the state historical commission. I think that's a pretty standard, public building, that's pretty standard.
So is there anything in here that allows people to move more quickly so that they don't have to wait a year?
yes, the delay will still be a year, but there is a provision for going back to the historical commission and asking for it to be rescinded if new information emerges or circumstances have changed. You can go back and ask for it to be taken away.
But why could, I guess my question is, and I am concerned about property owners in this and what they may or may not lose as a result of this. And after a year, you don't care, the building goes. So it would seem to me that it would be similar to inspection. Okay, this is a historical building. We're going to look at it, see if it merits renovation or whatever they're expected to do. And we will move quickly on this so that in 6 weeks or 2 months, we've determined that this has no historical value. We can go forward. I like the idea, but I also am concerned that I've seen after people have waited a year, they can tear it down or they can do whatever. And I guess maybe when this comes to town meeting, it might be useful to know how many have been put on a list that have to wait that period of time, and at the end of that time, how many were released from that. So you have an idea that, okay, 10 were on the list this year, and at the end of the year, 10 were given the go-ahead to tear it down. I really think that we have to think about property owners as far as some of this zoning is concerned. So I just throw that out there to be considered. Yes.
So there haven't been very many demolition delays imposed. I think there was a barn up in North Amherst owned by Coles Lumber, and that was considered to be in such bad condition that the Historical Commission said, yes, you can go ahead and take it down. On the other hand, there was a demolition delay imposed on the corner of Halleck Street and North Pleasant Street that did cause the landowners some difficulty because they had a tenant in mind, and because of the demolition delay, apparently they've lost their tenant. So it does work against some landowners. In that particular case, I understand that there was information that could have been presented to the Historical Commission, who may then have lessened the amount of time, although it's not strictly written in our current bylaw that you can lessen the amount of time. But that transaction or communication didn't happen. So I think what I'm trying to say is there's a very few situations where the Historical Commission actually imposes a demolition delay, and now we're suggesting that someone can come back if they do have a demolition delay imposed on them and present information, hardship information, or I've tried and nothing's working, or whatever. The other thing is that I heard the Historical Commission the other night say that they are willing to try to help landowners. So if there's a situation where there's a building that they really would like to preserve, they're willing to work with the landowner to try to figure out, can we move this building somewhere else? So that's something that I think was supposed to have happened when demolition delay initially came about, but has kind of dropped by the wayside. But the Historical Commission is ready to step forward and help landowners now.
But wasn't Little Red on that list? And then a fence around some historical home
Mm-hmm.
that belonged to Amherst College. Fence came down, Little Red came down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they waited the full time.
They did.
So I guess as you go back, it's just mine, not the Finance Committee's question, but as you go back, I think I'd like to suggest they at least look at moving along with these, with timelines. If you can get it done early, do it. Don't wait the full year. And you're saying that's not in here.
It is in here. The new one. The new one has a policy that an applicant can come back to the Historical Commission with new information, or just saying, I've tried to preserve this building and I can't figure out how to do it, so please lift the demolition delay. And then the Historical Commission would have an opportunity to lift the delay. They have to do it at a public hearing so that neighbors can come and comment as well. But it's an opportunity for the Historical Commission to reconsider their decision.
And that's in this paperwork?
It's in the new one,
Yeah.
yes.
Not this one?
Yes, it is
That's
in
in
that one.
Okay.
Mm.
So, okay.
Yep.
I understand that, but I guess what I'm saying, what is the process? So I come in and you say, no, you have to wait a year. What takes place between that time and the year? Who looks at it? Who determines? I mean, there has to be something from somebody to make that determination. Yes.
So first, a person would come to the building commissioner and say, I would like to tear my building down. The building commissioner looks at the criteria in this demolition delay bylaw and determines whether he can allow that building to be torn down, or whether, if it falls under certain criteria, the building would need to go to the Historical Commission for them to determine whether the building can come down. And then the Historical Commission uses certain criteria to determine whether they can take the building down now or whether they have to wait that demolition delay period. So it's, in the first place, it's the building commissioner that determines which way this is going to go, and then it's the Historical Commission, and the Historical Commission meets in public, and in the case of a demolition delay hearing, it is a public hearing with neighbors notified, and it's put in the paper, and it's a public process.
Let me follow up on that. So what do I have to do after that? I mean, okay, now you're saying there's a demolition delay. Wait. But who comes in there and between that time and the end time to make this thing move along? And that's my concern. Let's move it along.
So the Historical Commission has made a commitment to try to help people to figure out what to do with their properties, if there is a possibility of being able to move the building to another site. As we saw in Kendrick Park, there were many buildings that were actually taken off and moved to other sites. There were developers down on Gray Street who moved buildings to Gray Street from other sites in town. So we know that that can be done. So if it is possible, staff, the Historical Commission staff who works for me in my office, and the Historical Commission can help the applicant or the property owner to figure out if there is a path path forward to move the property, move the building. And sometimes buildings can be demolished and all their parts can be saved, so they can be used in other old buildings in other places. So there are a number of different things that can happen. We can do research to find out if the building really is historically significant or not. So, there's a lot of help out there.
Bernie, you had something.
Well, no, I'm just gonna try to make the point that the purpose of the delay is to find an alternative way of either renovating, reusing, or moving, or doing something with the properties, so it doesn't have to be destroyed. Thinking of Theodore Geisel's house on Maple Street, where I used to work near there, where the guy that owned it just decided to bring a bulldozer one day. So the idea, I would hope that the Historical Commission would sit down with the property owner and come up with a plan with benchmarks as to who's gonna do what. So that speaks to your concern. The other thing is in terms of penalties, I just skim this really quickly. What happens if somebody decides to go their own way and bring the bulldozer?
It's on there.
Is it $300 a day?
It was initially proposed to be $300 a day. That's $9,000 a month. So the Historical Commission the other night said that they would reduce that to $100. So you don't have the latest version. I think I sent this out early in the day. So the fine for taking down a building without permission is going to be $100 a day, and that lasts until you either build the building back again. In fact, I think that's what it says.
You have to build a dilapidated building
You
back
do,
again?
yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
It's section 3.81, so the number 300 has now been changed to 100.
That says for each offense, so that means, each day the violation.
Each day,
That's
yep.
each day is each day.
Each day the violation exists shall constitute a separate offense until the demolished building is rebuilt or recreated as directed by the Historical Commission, or unless otherwise agreed to by the Commission. And the building commissioner does have the ability to fine people, and he's very serious about it, and he takes them to court. So,
And Chris, what's deemed historical? Like how old? Like just
50?
50 years
50
old
years.
is what's looked at, but then there are criteria as to whether a 50-year-old building actually is historically significant or not. And I have pointed out to people that all of Echo Hill is over 50 years old. So we know that I live in Echo Hill, and many of the buildings there are not historically significant. So this captures a lot of buildings, but there are other criteria that the building commissioner will look at before he sends something to the Historical Commission.
okay. So if if they are over 50 years old, they're not automatically deemed historical.
No.
Okay.
No, it just means the building commissioner has to look at it to determine
To determine.
whether any of the other criteria apply.
Okay.
And if they apply, then it goes to the Historical Commission. The
Gotcha.
Historical Commission says, even if they apply, we don't care, or we do care.
Gotcha.
okay.
Thank you.
Long time on this, but
Yeah.
I think
It's
there's
cool.
interest.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on demolition? All right, then our next one is the amend the official zoning map.
Okay, so this is a petition article, it's not
Okay.
our article. I don't know if you're gonna hear from the petition or not. It's a request to rezone outlying residential parcels that are not served by water and sewer to low density residential, which is a step below, or it's the most, the least dense residential zone in town.
So if you say again, request to rezone, it's a request to rezone.
RO parcels that are not served by water and sewer.
Okay.
We do not actually know which parcels those are. It seems likely that the motion that the petitioner will make will specify which articles he is referring to, in which case it'll be easier to make a discussion about merits.
Chris?
Just so you know what the ramifications are, what it means is RO parcels are required to be 30,000 square feet, and RLD parcels are required to be 80,000 square feet. So there's a big difference between 30,000 and 80,000, and if someone is required to have 80,000, which is essentially 2 acres, to build a house, then he's going to be able to build fewer houses. So what it means is that there would be fewer houses built in those areas where this zoning change would occur.
Bernie?
In that square foot, because I take it this is an anti-development article, that would be my read of it, given that shift. And thank you for that information. It has questions. Does this also affect the frontage? So you'd need
Yes, it does.
It does affect the frontage as well. So we have sprawl, we have anti-housing embedded in this. You know, the cost of a lot right now in town is outrageous, and if you're gonna insist on greater frontage and 2.5 times the standard building lot, then that really boosts prices still more. So if we're concerned about housing availability in this community for middle-income families, this is not a good thing. You can also have a developer who wants to come in and say, I'll build houses on 30,000 square foot lots, and I'll extend the water and so on. So, you know, I'm not, has the planning board had a hearing on this yet, or you scheduled?
No, we don't even know how many lots this affects.
Okay.
Janice?
Oh, well, my area is not sewered now, but it's not in the North Amherst area, so I'm assuming that will also affect my area, which doesn't have very many empty lots to start with.
Chris?
So the way this is currently written, it applies to all RO zoning districts in town, and here's a zoning map, and so all of these white areas here are mostly RO. Some of them are RN, but it's a pretty big area of town. The green areas are RLD, so it would affect quite a lot of property. I understand that the proponent of this petition is thinking that he will limit the impact of this by limiting it geographically to the north. Whose phone is that? Is it mine? Excuse me. Here. Sorry. So anyway, he's considering limiting it to the northern area, parcels that are not served by sewer and water and that are above a certain elevation. So I'm going to be talking to him about that in the next few days, and he may really zero in and limit this proposal to a certain number of parcels. But he will need to do that as an amendment at town meeting, an amended motion at town meeting, because the petition has already been submitted. So he can't change it as it is right now.
Can I see that?
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, then,
So
yes, go ahead.
we have one.
Yes, this is, pardon, are you going to speak to that?
Mhm.
Okay, yes.
So a petition to amend the inclusionary zoning bylaw has been filed. And we have been working with the petitioner. We worked with him before he actually filed it. We continue to work with him after he filed it to refine the proposal. And it is possible, possibly likely, that the planning board will have its own version of inclusionary zoning amendments that will be similar to the petition article, but similar but a little bit different. He is proposing that, so the controversy for many years has been that inclusionary zoning applies, as the planning board has determined, only to residential uses that require special permit for the use. As a result, that means there are no residential uses in the general business district that require special permit for use, and therefore inclusionary zoning does not really apply downtown. Some people have wanted inclusionary zoning to apply to any special permit that's applied for any reason, including for dimensional modifications. The planning board has resisted that. This article would proposes to introduce some dimensional special permits that would trigger inclusionary zoning, but not all special permits. He would limit them to special permits that speak to the size of the building, the footprint of the building, the height of the building, the number of floors of the building. If those are changed, then the inclusionary zoning bylaw would take effect. And the zoning subcommittee and the planning board have tentatively agreed to that approach. It takes away the special permits that affect setbacks, signage, things that don't really affect the size of the building, they affect how the building works on a particular lot or how it displays to the street. So that's what the petition would do. It would increase the applicability of inclusionary zoning to a few kinds of dimensional special permits. The planning board's version would incorporate that, but also add a couple of alternative compliance provisions for a developer who does not want to actually provide units on site. So we are proposing that a fee in lieu of an affordable unit could be an option, or provision of an affordable unit off-site could be an option for fulfilling the affordable mandate. And so we have some provisions about how those would be implemented. This is a compromise article that I think gives both parties who've been interested in inclusionary zoning something that they have wanted, but not everything that they wanted. And it seems to us a reasonable midway point. The trade-off for a larger building would be some responsibility for providing affordable housing, whether it's actual units or money that can be used by the Municipal Housing Trust to provide affordable units elsewhere.
Okay. Questions on that? I realize something I have not done, and that is notified the petitioners that we were meeting tonight. So we will do that, and we will invite them to come. We'll try to work out a night. Maybe you can come. We'd start it early, so you can be here when there are 2 petition articles. Mm-hmm. There might be more on other issues, but we do. They need an opportunity to say something, and that was my error. So we'll work it out with you. Yes.
So our hope is that we will come to an agreement with the petition on inclusionary zoning, and only one of those articles will be brought forward, not both. Or
Okay.
One will be dismissed.
And you can come to that meeting. Bernie.
Yeah, I'm a skeptic when it comes to inclusionary zoning. I haven't seen a lot of compelling information that tells me it works. Okay. That said, I think offering these alternatives is a good way to go, because you are edging towards your goal of more housing, particularly if there's a payment in lieu provision. So I think those are reasonable adjustments, and thank you for coming up with that and doing that.
The other thing is, we've gone through these, we generally ask, do you see these as having a financial impact? So going back to the first one, since we've gone through, I think we've finished all of the ones on your list. So going back to the first one, the zoning for recreational marijuana retail, do you see that as a financial issue?
No,
that we would take a position on.
That merely clarifies what is already existing language. It's not intended to make any change at all. So.
Okay, so you don't see a financial impact anyway. All right. Then medical marijuana treatment center off-site. That's the second one on the list. What about that?
I don't think it would have a major impact. It's possible that if a medical-only facility existed, and the fact that they were allowed to be a for-profit, they might be a more valuable business and pay more property tax. But it seems unlikely that there's going to be all that many medical-only establishments.
Okay.
presumably
We
recreational.
could
That's where the money's at.
I won't question that. We might, whatever our write-up may be, we might say we're not really sure, but, okay, marijuana uses.
Again, we don't know even for sure whether any businesses will take advantage of these uses if we decide to propose zoning for them.
This language, basically, at this point.
Yes.
May I say something?
Sure, yes.
So Jeff Kravitz, who's the Economic Development Director, does hear frequently from people who want to establish particularly cultivation sites, either small cultivation sites or perhaps locating out in the farmland areas. And some of the marijuana use allowances that would be made by the passage of this marijuana use bylaw would allow those things to occur. So we do know that some people are interested in having some of those uses.
Okay, so it's possible. I mean, again, we can, just say possible, not for sure. We tend to be as accurate as we can with saying it's a possibility, or yes, we think so. So it's good. All right, the zoning, supplemental dwelling units.
To the extent that it increases the value of a property, if someone would build
okay.
something, possibly.
Property value. Okay. Right, the demolition and delay of the historical commission, or demolition delay bylaw.
There's an existing demolition delay bylaw. This is not a huge change in that. I don't know that.
Doesn't cost the town money, Chris?
It doesn't cost the town money, but I think it clarifies things enough for applicants that applicants won't be kind of scrambling around trying to figure out how to approach what it is they want to do. It'll be a clearer process for them, as well as for staff, so it'll save staff time trying to figure out if something applies or doesn't apply.
I could see how it would have a possible financial effect, especially for the building in town that has a year demolition delay. If that came sooner, if that process could happen sooner, then that would be on the tax. A new building would potentially be on the tax rolls.
Yeah, well, that could be in the write-up too.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't know about the petitioners and the official zoning map. We'll hear from them, we can make that decision later.
May I
And yes,
just observe that it would allow fewer houses to be built in town. And therefore, I think that there would be less tax revenue. So that would be an implication, a financial implication.
and right, we have to weigh that because it may be more services, and maybe
Yeah.
people will petition for a sewer line, which people have done. We're one of them on our street. So, pardon?
That's why you pay betterments.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said, that's why you pay betterments.
Oh, okay. No, we didn't even have to do that.
Well,
It was- we did this all the old day when life was simple. Go ahead.
Well, they could also build a bigger house if they have a bigger lot,
There you go.
so you don't know.
All right, that's good. And then the inclusionary, that probably is revenue generating.
So it may, I think the most likely effect of this bylaw is that it will decrease the amount of special permits that are requested by builders in town. And so you'll get more buildings that actually conform to the bylaw as it exists. And possibly not many more, not many actually trigger inclusionary zoning provisions. All the buildings that have been built in the last few years have needed some special permit or another, or have asked for a special permit.
And this will decrease that.
That's just a prediction, but who knows?
Okay.
Maybe not.
Very good.
Is it going to function as a deterrent to, I mean, if you're going to build a building, you're going to have done some marketing studies. And my assumption is that buildings that have asked for changes for researched economic version reasons. So if you start to force people into, or make it too punishing to get a special permit, you're going to decrease the opportunity for new construction.
That's good.
That's why I think it's important to offer people alternatives. That's why I like the idea of doing something off-site, in kind, by creating a structure or making a contribution.
But another way to say that is that I think this is Weiss. The Weiss article would decrease, and this would perhaps be
Decrease
more-
less.
Yes.
Decrease less?
I think so.
Any other questions from the committee? Have any other comments you'd like to make?
No, thank you for hearing us.
Well, thank you for coming. You always give us a lot of information. And of all the committees, I think you're the hardest working. My eyes just glaze over as you go, whatever these numbers are.
May I ask an overall question?
Sure.
You know, because, you know, you are, we kind of see this every once in a while when we kind of when you come and tell us about this, you are thinking about this all the time. How far does the planning department think in terms of planning for Amherst? Like, you know, is there a 5-year, 10-year horizon, or how does, you know? Because I'm kind of curious about it, because I know everything is changing, and it's going to, you know, the town's going to be different in 5 years and 10 years. So, is there any kind of evolving, you know, a conception of what the town's going to be like and what the planning needs are going to be going forward?
So we have been engaged in a process of trying to figure out how to plan for the growth or the development of the town center.
Sure. Yeah.
Defining it and figuring out how it should evolve. That process is ongoing. I don't think we have an idea about when we're going to be done. And even when we do get done, obviously
No,
it's going to be time to start
so
over.
in your planning, is it a 5-year plan you have or a 10-year plan? I mean, how does it work?
Chris.
Well, we have a master plan, and the
Yeah,
master plan was adopted in
that's right.
2010, and master plans usually last for 10 years, you know, at least 10 years. So we've been working on the things that are in the master plan,
Sure.
and as we go along, we've been changing the zoning downtown to allow taller buildings, changing the zoning to allow special permits, to allow density modifications, dimensional modifications. So little by little, we've been doing the things that are in the master plan. So that's kind of our plan. We have not done a plan to see what the full build out of the downtown would be.
Yes.
Although that might come about as part of our downtown forum process. We've had 2 downtown forums so far, and there may be other ones coming up, and there may be other efforts that are associated with that, where we could start to evaluate what is the possibility for our downtown. But another thing that we have to consider is that we're not limited by the zoning that we have right now. So many people have talked about expanding the size of the downtown, and there are people who are pro and people who are con, and depending on where exactly you expand it to and what exactly you propose there, people may or may not be amenable to that. So the planning board is constantly thinking about that. There are 3 limited business zones that are right around the downtown, and the planning board has been talking about those for a long time, about what might happen there. So if those had a different type of zoning, then a different scenario would be possible for the downtown. So it's not kind of a static thing.
Sure.
But I think, you know, the master plan does give us a set of guidelines to move forward, because we know.
But the master plan is fairly broad, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not, you know, it's not operating. There are no, you're making a lot of choices within that framework.
Mhm.
But the master plan doesn't really specify those choices you make, right? I mean, is that right?
I think that's right.
So, So the choices are being made within the framework, but there could be other choices too over there. I was just most curious about, how the planning department is thinking about the future. I think the press of everyday needs is so, operating needs is so much that you have to kind of, I don't know how you find time to think about stuff which is not immediate, so.
Chris?
So the master plan, again, back to the master plan, talks about developing the downtown and developing the village centers. And we have been studying the North Amherst Village Center in particular. And one of the reasons that the Beacon project came about was because of an effort to study North Amherst and bring attention to it and talk about rerouting roadways up there and really making it possible to be a place that would be a nice place to be where people would want to live. And we're probably going to see this Beacon project starting over the summer. So, that's the kind of thing that incrementally we look at and we plan. And there may be opportunities for doing that in the downtown as well, and we're just now engaged in that process.
So right now the focus areas really, given the priorities you have in your department, the focus areas are the downtown and the North Amherst.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Janice?
So following up on that, I know the master plan encourages denser development downtown, but it never says how much. I mean, theoretically, you could fill it all with these huge 5-story buildings. So where is the limit, or is there a limit?
Well, I think some of the properties are already developed. Most of it is already developed. It's really just in the northern end of downtown where there are potentially properties that could either be redeveloped or filled in. So that's probably the area that's most likely to change in the future. But then there are also these pockets of property on the edge that we've talked about, and depending on what the zoning of those properties are, those could change as well. So the zoning is what it is right now. It's allowing 5 stories, and it's allowing buildings that are bigger than what we've seen in the past. If you wanted to have a smaller type of development, that would have to be changed because people are allowed to build to 5 stories right now. We can control to some degree what the buildings look like through design review and through the planning board review. The planning board has also been thinking of looking into form-based code or some kind of design guidelines for things that are built downtown, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. One of the things that we tried to explore in our last downtown forum is what types of architecture people prefer. And we have put that survey online, and we have gotten some responses to determine what kind of architecture people prefer. So we're sort of gathering information and doing this bit by bit.
So John,
Sure.
clarifying question. So thank you. So that's kind of very helpful to kind of try to understand that. My understanding is that the way the current zoning is, the big buildings that are in town right now and the ones that might come in the future are not obligated to provide parking. Could you elaborate on that and what the town's position on that is?
So a number of years ago, many years ago in fact, I think it was in the 1960s that the municipal parking district was set up, and the recognition was that there are certain uses that go on in the downtown, and if we wanted to have all of these uses downtown, we couldn't possibly ask people to provide the parking on site. We need the buildings to be closer together, and we don't want them to be separated by large parking lots. So that was back then, and over the years there wasn't much development in the downtown until fairly recently, until when 2010 really is when development really started to take off. So by that time, there was a fairly large municipal parking district that stretches all the way up to Primo Pizza at the north end of town. So I think there is a recognition on the part of the planning board and planning staff and others in town that parking is an issue. It's not something that we are particularly interested in imposing a parking requirement on developers. What we are currently engaged in is we have a parking working group that's trying to maximize the use of parking that already exists in the downtown, and they've made a number of changes to try to encourage turnover, encourage employees to park outside of the center of the downtown, etc. They're also going to start looking into the possible use of private parking lots, because we know we have a lot of private parking that surrounds the downtown that's empty most of the day because people who live in these buildings are gone, or people who, they're just not there during the day. So the effort is to try to reach out to these private property owners to see if there can be some arrangement made between the town and the property owners to manage their parking so that the public can take advantage of their parking. So that's kind of one of the next steps that the Downtown Parking Working Group is taking. The Downtown Parking Working Group had a number of strategies that they were working on. They also have a subcommittee that's working on the potential for a parking garage. So they haven't lost sight of the fact that we may need a parking garage in the future, but they really wanted to try to maximize the parking that we have right now so that we didn't have to immediately jump into a parking garage, which can be a very expensive prospect. There's also thoughts, and I think we talked about this last time, on the part of many saying that millennials aren't driving as much. People are using Zip cars, people are using Uber. So in the future, there may not be as many cars. So that's kind of an evolving trend, and we're trying to figure that out.
Are there any signs of that the car usage is not as high as you were expecting?
There are signs of it. We do see articles from time to time that talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. So broadly, the town's position is that there is going to be a greater need of parking as we build out the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And that need is, we're going to try to absorb that need with what we have right now, and through some creative ways in which working with the private owners of parking lots and stuff like that. And when those creative solutions tap out, at that point we're going to start thinking about some other things. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then Chris and then Janice.
So I just wanted to mention one more thing, the emergency, snow emergency parking. In the past, we've had parking banned overnight all winter long from,
Right.
I think, December 1st to April 1st. So this year was the first year when we've decided to open up the parking, to allow overnight parking on most of the streets, the side streets and the main streets in town. And I think that's an example of how we have capitalized on existing parking and made it more available and more useful to people who live downtown and work downtown.
Okay, great, thank you.
Why can't you require builders to have like parking for the people who live in a building on the lower floor? I've been in several buildings in other places. The bottom level or the basement level is parking, and then the living spaces above that.
Chris.
Do you want to answer?
Sure, yeah, I can answer that. It's not clear how much parking is enough. The One East Pleasant is going to have 100 and some units, and 100 and some parking spaces, or 200 and some parking spaces if you require 2 per unit. It takes up a lot of space, and we don't want that space. We don't want to have service parking lots, but we also don't want to have blank first floors that don't have, that aren't interesting storefronts. One East Pleasant is providing some parking for users of that building. I think we don't really know how much parking is the right amount. The municipal parking district so far has, I think, worked the way it's supposed to work. Now that there are more residential units downtown, it's possible that it will work less well, and we will need to adjust the requirement. It may be possible that we do something along the lines of what we're doing inclusionary zoning, and not necessarily require the developer to provide actual parking, but to provide to contribute to the parking solution with payments in lieu or some other way.
Bernie?
Yeah, I was to say, it's a balance here, because my experience is there's a certain endowment effect. You know, we think this is Amherst, it's precious to us. It's got to be precious to everybody. Somebody, you know, Bob the builder comes in, he's going to look at what the market allows and what he can do and how to return a reasonable profit. So if you begin to say, okay, Bob the builder, you have to provide 1 or 1.5 parking spaces for every dwelling unit, he's not going to do that because the topography, the space allowed, the cost involved, just aren't going to cause those buildings to be built. Northampton has a remote parking bylaw. They've used that to great effect. Some of the most valuable apartments in town are right downtown where there is no parking, but there's remote parking somewhere else. So that's
for those buildings in downtown.
Right. So that's that's a viable alternative to this. But you really do have to play with this and play with this in terms of the market. And we're trying to encourage some development, and we've got to get that delicate balance of right size, right type, and not continually imposing all the stuff that goes on. There are other places in the world where visiting friends who they have to hunt for a parking space for their car every night, and they live in a fairly tony neighborhood in a California town. But that's part of the deal. The other thing is that the parking industry is down by about 25% in urban areas because people aren't using parking lots. They're doing Uber, they're doing Lyft, they're doing public transportation. And I would be more interested in seeing a robust kind of public transportation piece for the town to move people around as part of, that could be contributed to by developers. So that we don't need to be as car owner dependent as we are. I don't know, Jim, my car spends probably 80% of its life sitting in the driveway. So if I could not own that and still move around, that would be a real valuable thing to me.
I think we've had a lot of information, we've wandered off zoning, but
No, it
goes
right back to zoning.
it probably does in
Land use
terms of
Yeah,
what
land use drives economic value, and you know, we probably talk a lot more. I mean, one of the things that I ask about is green print for the town. That's another
another night,
discussion for
another
time.
issue. Thank you again for coming. Appreciate all the information you bring and all the work you do. It's a great committee.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now on, why don't we just, do you have any update on the municipal budget for 18?
That's status quo.
Oh, okay, that's good. So then we are on the operating budget votes. And first, before we get into that, I do want to say for the audience out there, we're going to look at the budgets for individual departments. And the Finance Committee has met with all the town department heads, and we've reviewed and discussed the budgets in the functional areas. We've had the manager's budget and additional information. So we're going to approve of the final figures in those budgets. So as we quickly go through this, you do need to know that we've spent a lot of time on all of these areas, and now we have the final lines for those budgets. And I wanted to also say, which I missed at the beginning, is to thank Amherst Media for all the filming they do of this committee and our ability to go on Amherst Media and view these meetings, especially when we get behind in the minutes. Very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so now we go forward, and Sonia has
grid sheets here for
our grid sheets. Okay, so Sonia, it's yours.
So I think we are okay to vote all the numbers on here, up to transportation. Because we haven't met with the schools yet, so we don't want to vote on their budgets until they're here.
Right, we
Or the
have,
library.
right, we will be seeing them in the next couple of weeks. So we start with the select board. Oh, I'm sorry, retirement assessments.
Right.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve of $5,565,471 for retirement assessments?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, and these are going to, we raise our hand and vote for this so we have the numbers. Okay, is there any question about the retirement assessments? We've talked about this before. Okay, all in favor of that number, please raise your hands. Okay, so that's 6, 0, and 1 absent. All right, the next one, regional lockup, and that's $35,928.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions about regional lockup? That was heard from the police chief on that. Okay, all in favor of that amount, please raise your hands. Okay, that's 601. Other post-employment benefits, I'm gonna leave that to Honorab.
Okay, I'll do it. I think it's not going to be pretty this year, but do it.
Okay, do you hear a motion?
I move that we allocate $500,000 to OPEB this year.
Do you hear a
Second.
second? Okay, any questions about OPEB?
So this has been 5 years ago. We put in 100,000. We've been going up 100 a pop every year.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is only for the town. This is not doesn't include schools.
The elementary schools are in here, the regional schools have their own.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor? All right, 601. All right, reserve fund, Joe.
Uh-huh. So moved.
We have to give the number.
Oh, sorry.
100,000.
$100,000.
A second on that?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, 601. Ooh,
The 23 million is the
Just
total,
the
is
total
the sum
we're gonna
total
spend.
of all the green highlighted.
okay. Okay, Bernie is the next
So
one.
I'm going to move the sum of $7,855,219 for general government.
Second.
All right, any questions? All right, all in favor? Okay, public safety is Joe.
Public safety. I move for public safety $10,446,161.
Second.
Okay, questions? All right, all in favor? Okay, 601. Public Works,
Is that me too?
that's you too.
Hot dog. I move for public works $2,355,505.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right. SB isn't here, that's going to be you, Sharon.
SP for
That's you,
Oh, no, it's-
that's Steve Braun.
conservation and development, I move an amount of $1,439,099.
Second.
Okay,
All in favor?
all in favor? All right, Tim isn't here. Want to do that, Honorable?
Which one?
Community services.
I move that the town allocate $1,748,486 to community services this year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Who's doing community services?
Tim.
Thanks.
Okay, debt service,
Can
Honorable.
I do all these enterprise
Yes.
funds at once?
No, you have to do them individually, but we'll go down the list.
Okay, I move that the town allocate $2,209,960 to debt service this year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, next one.
I move that the town allocate $4,177,666 to the sewer fund this year.
Okay, all in favor?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All right, next one.
I move that the town allocate $3,996,578 to the water fund this year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay,
I move that the town allocate $487,270 to the solid waste fund this year.
Second.
all in favor? All right, 601.
And why is the transportation fund highlighted there?
Because at the last meeting, we had changed the transportation fund,
Okay.
and Maria had redone the sheets,
Yes.
that's the other attachment that you have here, to the new amounts. We reduced the revenue estimate by $50,000. We moved the $100,000 capital that was for the cash portion of the parking lot. We moved that to be a total borrowing of $450,000, and we added $50,000 for transportation parking study.
Okay.
So the new amount is what's on the sheet in yellow.
You want to make that motion, Rob?
I move that the town allocate $819,121 to the transportation fund this year.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Didn't we just have a parking study?
A couple of years ago.
Is this really considered?
It's a good for consultant, study consultant.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, 6. Right, we we won't do the schools or the library or the other items on the list tonight, but we do have these, which means those of you who have write-ups can take these amounts and begin to write up your section. You all did receive the town meeting report from last year to use. I think I sent it to everybody. If I didn't, I can resend it.
Did you
Do
send
that?
it?
Did you resend it?
When did you send
I
it?
will resend it. Well, Sonia sent it to me and then I sent it to everybody.
Was that recently?
Yeah, oh, a month ago? What do you think?
A couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. But I will do it. I have it on my computer, so I'll just send it out to everyone.
There's one more you could actually vote. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's the revolving fund reauthorization. It's just a housekeeping item. It's just approving, reauthorizing the,
400,000?
yeah. It's the special revolving fund for after-school program. So it's just authorizing expending 400,000, but that's just the cap. You can't spend more than that. But we'd have to generate enough revenue to spend that much. We only spend what we take in,
Okay.
so.
All right, well, I move that we spend we have $400,000 in the revolving fund for the after-school program.
Second.
Okay, any questions about that fund? We set that up, what, maybe 4 years ago?
Right,
Okay,
No, my understanding is you have to renew this annually.
yes.
again.
Right.
So, and place a cap on it, so
Right.
there's no money in it, but
No,
there will be.
right.
So this is Sharon's also?
oh, that was Steve Brown, okay, yes,
Steve's before.
you can do that one too, Sharon. I already said, so, all in favor of this, please, raise your hands. Okay, so
Okay,
6.
Sharon, you're doing resolving?
Everything that has SB by it will be Sharon.
I'll just consider it a typo.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, it's considered a typo, right? So, okay, any other questions? All right, we're finished with that then for tonight, and you can begin writing. I probably need to look at the Finance Committee report to town meeting and begin to do some editing and commenting and that, working with Janice on that. And then, and Sonia, because we put that information in, then we get the draft to you and you comment on it also. But we kind of do the groundwork for it so that we're not all trying to write it together at a meeting. It doesn't work well. Okay, so, let's see, that's the next thing on the agenda. Oh, the liaison reports. Now, Joe, did you get to a meeting?
There has not been a meeting. It's coming up, I think, in like 3 weeks.
That's what you keep saying every time.
Well,
you come.
I missed
It's
the one
coming up
last
in
month,
3
so I
weeks.
was honest with you because they just don't have a lot of meetings. They're not like us. You know, they just have one like, every month and then maybe a couple weeks after. They don't have, it's not
Do you
like
think
we
we'll
can-
ever have a DPW or a fire station at this pace?
No. But the next meeting is in like, it's either 2 or 3 weeks. And so I'll be there and then I'll be able to report and give you the full power update.
Can somebody really put that in the minutes? Oh, you're taking the minutes?
Yes,
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
2 weeks, we're gonna have a report.
you're gonna get a report in 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, I'm not lying to you. I would
It's not his fault if they don't have the meeting.
Yeah, so last time I just couldn't go because it did conflict with.
That's okay.
Why don't you do what everybody else, just make something up?
I could do that.
Just a white lie, just a white lie.
Okay, next week I'll have some.
Yeah, we have,
You can always say, we're still looking for a site.
Yeah,
That's been
well, that is
5
true.
years
They are still
anyway.
doing that.
Maybe 10.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll get them the most recent copy of their meeting because the last meeting they had like 3 weeks ago, they had minutes on it, and I'll review those and talk to the
Okay.
folks to be.
Have you had any library meetings?
No,
Okay,
not that I'm aware of. I
okay.
don't get their emails, so they don't come to me.
Any other committees? Okay, the Capital Planning Committee met today, and the fire department came, and they didn't bring any exciting equipment. I guess in the past they bring exciting equipment, but they do have on the list a new ambulance. They have a rotating schedule. I think it's I don't know if it's 7 or 10 years, and then they.
Yeah, it's
you
10
know,
years, I think.
Okay, and then they, trade one in and then get a new one. So that's on the schedule. And then some radios, some smaller things. Conservation couldn't meet with us today. We did have 2 petitioners come who are petitioning for a sidewalk on East Pleasant Street. The part of East Pleasant that is not sidewalk, and there's evidently a lot of traffic in terms of foot traffic, car traffic, and bike traffic. Evidently last year, the select board decided that we would use the form for requests as they do for departments. Departments have to fill out requests for all their equipment and tell why it's needed and so forth. So they decided they would let petitioners do that too. And so this 2 people came about the sidewalk, and they talked about, they'd gone to the transportation committee, they've talked to Guilford, they've done all of these things, and they feel as though no one is listening, and that really isn't the issue. The issue is that there's a long list of many things and projects to be done. And if you saw today's paper, I think the manager is asking for $1 million plus for improvement of some roads in town this coming fiscal year. So we talked a lot about that. Do people come kind of around, the groups that are looking at all of these things like the Transportation Committee and DPW? They look at all of this and they prioritize, and now you have people coming in who want to be heard and have legitimate concerns, but it may not be right on the list where they'd like to be, although they did say even if we know it's going to be 5 years down the road, at least it's on the paper, So I think our group is kind of trying to figure out how do we, as a capital planning committee, listen to these requests and then get them to the departments in such a way that we aren't saying this has to override what you've done, but here are some additional requests from people in the community. So it was an interesting discussion, but the big thing is today is what the fire department needs. And I'm not sure that, we're supposed to hear them next week, but they will not have their list of this joint planning committee. They won't have joint capital planning committee. They won't have that final product in terms of what they prioritized for each group. So we won't be doing that next week. And what was the other one we're going to do next week? I was looking.
Community preservation.
Are they, community preservation, are they going to be ready?
They just voted Tuesday on their projects. They won't have the report done.
But they could come
Thursday.
and present what's in the report.
They could come and tell you what they recommended, what they
Okay.
recommended. Yes.
Okay, that might be another thing. So, anyway, that's, I was just looking at joint capital planning. I know they won't be ready next week. Any other? Yes.
Question, so this new sidewalk you're talking, that's on East Pleasant Street?
East Pleasant, I believe.
East Pleasant.
But we just heard the request.
Yeah, it's a petition.
And then we're sending it back to Guilford and it's called the Transportation Advisory Committee, TAC.
Sure.
Okay. We have all these committees. I think and it's new. It's a relatively new committee.
And so what's going on with community preservation? Was there something that happened there or no?
Sonia said they just voted Tuesday what they were going to recommend.
Okay,
Their report would not be done next week, but they
Okay.
would have their recommendations. They could come and at least present their recommendations.
okay,
I believe that is one that we can only take money away or tell them we don't want them to spend it in that way, but we can't add anything
Right.
to it. It's a very,
Town meeting cannot add to it.
right, it's a very
They can
separate.
listen. Right.
okay.
So I think basically what we've done with that one in the past is to say what they are recommending to appropriate are within the scope of that particular, is it a grant that we get?
It's the surcharge that's imposed on
Okay.
taxes.
Okay, it's within the
Value
scope
over
of that,
$100,000.
of what we can spend in that account.
Okay.
So,
Appropriate use.
Community preservation.
Appropriate use.
appropriate use,
CPA.
appropriate use, right. Okay, any other committees?
So
Okay, well,
I'm just wondering about next week if JCPC is not coming, CPA will take all of 10 minutes.
and we do have to invite, do we have any other petitions? We'll invite the two people, two petitioners this time, or the people on the two petitions.
It's
We'll invite
whatever's
them.
online. I think there was.
I haven't looked online. Were there many?
I think there was like 4 or 5. Some are resolutions. Do you even?
We
listen
don't,
to
well, we
resolutions?
kind of look at them before we invite
Because-
people.
No, because resolution doesn't affect anything.
Right, right. Although, if it involves money, we may want to take a position, but I don't know, I haven't looked. So do you see, so what we have left then, what is our timeline? So, so we have, oh, that's the wrong month, that's the wrong year.
When you have a library, I'm just.
I have a 2-year calendar.
The schools and libraries.
Okay, the 8th.
Calendar different for some reason.
Now I'm trying to see what,
Yeah, this,
okay, I unfortunately left mine in my, oh, no, I have it here. So, it's a matter of when we need our reports in. So,
could we do the libraries?
could we do, yes, the library's ready. So, okay, next week then why don't we do, have the Community Preservation Act group come, do the library and do all the petitions, invite the two people who weren't here, the petitioners on those two articles who weren't here tonight, invite them to come next week.
Yeah, we can, ask Sharon in the morning if she can.
If she could come,
Yeah.
yes, let's start with Sharon, and if she can make it next week, then we'll fill in with the other people.
Okay.
And then, anything else for next week if the library can come, in addition to the petitioners and CPAC? Nothing? Okay, then, and then the following week, March 15th, will be the schools. Okay. And I believe they're voting next Tuesday. We could find out if their votes, let's see, the regional vote is on the 13th. Amherst is on the 20th, so they're, regional will be done, and, oh no, next week is the 8th.
Can I see them?
Sure.
Well, if you have schools on the 15th, they're really gonna be ready.
Well, right, but if we wait, the Amherst vote isn't until the 20th, and by then, we need some of our paperwork in, so they're running late. But they may, the big issue really has been region, because of the assessment method. So I think we're going to have to leave them for the 15th, because there are issues still with that. But I did see Eric this morning, and he said they were voting next week.
Has in the past, has the Joint Capital Planning Committee has their report actually been done?
What has been done is they have, not the written report, but the spreadsheet, that has been done. And so we see that. But we don't always have the report, you're right.
Right.
Because that takes more time to write up.
And we normally don't vote on that until we have the amounts for capital. We don't vote on those articles.
Right, but I think it's important for this committee to see what people are proposing. Now, so we won't no. Next week we're meeting next Thursday, right? No, we won't be ready even with recommendations. Because conservation is coming next week. So, we will have something, but we're not exactly sure. But we'll let you know, and if we don't have, an agenda that lasts more than an hour, we'll just wait till the following week. Okay, does that make sense? All right, then,
So it's possible we might not meet next week? Is that what you're saying?
it's possible,
Okay.
but leave it open.
Mhm.
Okay, because we also don't want to be at the next meeting so filled that we can't spend time. The region is I think really important. Now, how much will come to this table in terms of the assessment, I don't know. If, all the, or 3 of the 4 towns must vote the budget. And this assessment go around, it's still an alternative. I don't know that anybody's going to vote to open the agreement to change the assessment method, because I'm hearing that that's an issue still in some places. So if it's a formula that has to be voted because it's an alternative method, all 4 towns have to vote the alternative method for this year. And then if they do, then 3 of the 4 towns have to approve the budget. So we'll check with first the library, then see about the schools. But I'm tending to think we probably would have a meeting so that we're not rushed at the very end, because we have reports to write. Yes.
Oh, is there going to be another 4-town meeting? Don't we usually have one in March?
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
I didn't see any for March. We do have,
I have a note here to check with Sean tomorrow when the next meeting is.
for what, the assessment meeting? I thought I had that in my book, but I don't see it here. So it has not been set. Okay, hearing no other comments, I will entertain a motion. Oh,
What about our minutes?
sure. Oh, the minutes, absolutely.
Seeing as people were really good about
They
saying
really got them out to us, and that's good. Thank you for doing that. Okay, the first set of minutes are January 25th. And they are from Honorab. So, do I hear a motion to approve of the minutes of January 25th? Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, any comments or edits? All right, all in favor of the minutes as written, please say aye. Aye. All right, opposed? All right, unanimous. Minutes of February 8th.
Isn't there one absent? Do I have to take?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
601 absent.
These are January 8th.
Sharon's minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Yeah, move.
Oh,
Okay,
wait, I
second.
can't, I wasn't here.
You were, okay. Somebody who was here?
I wasn't here either, so.
Oh, okay.
So move.
Right, were you here, Joe?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Is my name on there?
Except not Bernie and not me.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I didn't put Bernie as absent, I think I just.
Yes, you
Yeah, you
did.
did.
And you have Janice as absent
You
also.
didn't
But in
put
two
me at
different
first.
places. I know, and I
That's
knew because
okay.
I looked at the tapes and I was like, oh yeah.
No, that's
I
okay.
was asking questions for Janice, I think she wasn't there.
All right,
Oh,
no,
that's right.
you're fine. Okay, do I hear a second? Honorable, how about a second? Okay,
Second.
all right. All in favor of the minutes as written, please raise your hands. You weren't
Oh, wait,
here.
never mind.
Before,
Trick question.
4, 2, and
I do
1.
that all the time. No, I was like, where's
I was
man?
trying to figure
Wait,
out.
there's like,
what
what do you
was
think?
doing.
But I like it anyway.
Okay, was everybody here on that one? All right.
Okay, so what was?
Okay, and the minutes of February 15th, and those
I
were
wasn't there either.
Janice. And you were absent too, Bernie, so you can't. All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Just a question, why is this one line in yellow?
That was a change from the first draft,
Oh, okay, all right, fine.
but I'll take it off when I post it.
I'm sure you will. Okay, all right, all in favor of the minutes as written, please raise your hands. Okay, 5-1-1. Okay, anything else?
You know, I got another set.
I had 2.
Oh, okay.
January
February-
25th and February 1st.
First.
Okay, February 1. I was absent, I think. I was absent one of those. I think so. All right, the minutes of February 1.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, and does anyone have them in front of them? Anurag, was I here? I don't think I missed one of those meetings. Was
I think you did, the second one. The February 1st is the one you missed.
Okay, All right, then, are there any other comments to those minutes? Okay, all in favor of the minutes, please raise your hand. And I abstain, so it's 5-1-1.
5-0.
Yeah, this.
That's the updated transportation sheets.
Okay. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We adjourned at, wow, look at this.
Same answer.
This is a record.
8:47. Thank you, Amherst Media.
Presentation.